Hello and welcome to the Morningscape podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell to cover the Thursday, March 29th Daily Fantasy NHL slate. DJ, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. About to be Easter break for me. In my last push of college, I effing wait. I know this is a family podcast and children could be listening, so I cannot freaking wait. Right? That'd be the right word to use there, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm ready to be able to focus more on daily fantasy, not have things come up last minute and just completely derail my chance of making a lineup. Um, like today I had to go help and renovate a soup kitchen, which was a lot of fun. Stuff like that just gets in the way. I'm not that that's a bad thing, I'm saying, but like just always having responsibilities and night classes at 6 to 8 and just all that stuff so I can focus next year. I can't wait to be a bit more active overall and have money to put in DraftKings. So I'm counting down the days. We're almost done with this season, and it feels like my last season before I can like really, really, really get into it. Although I have a podcast for daily fantasy, so some would argue that I'm way too into it already, but you just wait.
Yeah, that's yes, it is it's a wonderful freedom, I guess, to just waste all your time
Yeah,
on
right. Like
fantasy
when you were in
hockey.
school last year, Matt, like did you just not do as well and like just feel like all the time like I don't have time to get all of the stuff I want to get done because
Um, no, but I pretty much shirked my school responsibilities in
ah,
favor of writing
that is
fantasy
fair.
hockey. So I'm in a bit of a different ballpark than you are
That is
currently.
I guess that's fair, but we can ignore our personal lives because I mean, who really cares? And we can get into the daily fantasy goodness. So some people will call this their favorite time of the year in daily fantasy. That nice push. You kind of get rid of some of the scrubs that are getting into that don't really care about daily fantasy into baseball. So that could be the negative, but you're also getting all of the college free agents. We're about to push into playoff hockey, which I know Matt you will love from a daily fantasy perspective, and we are getting to like the big important games for the regular season to see who makes the playoffs. A lot of
Hey,
things coming together at once.
a game in October is worth as much as a game in April. Remember that.
Never forget. So
um, but yeah, no, it is awesome. Even if it's all fan created, the intensity is just insane. So it is a ton of fun to watch. Definitely looking forward to it. Obviously, good luck in baseball if you're playing that. I know we have people in the group me already talking about baseball and strategy and stuff. So if you didn't feel the need to join for hockey, but just want to come chat about other daily fantasy, then by all means, feel free to shoot us a DM. We can get you in there. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to say. I think from a macro perspective, just repeat the same thing. This is the time of year, like you mentioned, all the like different things are happening for different teams. So be mindful of a team's, I guess, intentions going into a given game. And yeah, we can touch on some individual spots as we go game by game here. You ready to start, DJ?
why not?
All right, so let's start with Tampa Bay at Boston. Um, Tampa last time out for them were without Steven Stamkos, and they lost to the Arizona Coyotes pretty resoundingly. That didn't stop Nikita Kucherov from having a fine daily fantasy output, but he is expected back. Stamkos is for this matchup. Stamkos has been priced down to 6,800. I know it's on the road and it's in Boston against, you would presume, that first line for Boston being Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak. So, what is your interest level here in Tampa, or do any of these Boston guys move the needle for you?
Well, I mean, on the Tampa side, we'll just start there. I mean, I'm probably interested just in the contrarian sense. I feel like they'll be. I mean, this will be the cheapest you'll get. Not though. I mean, cheapest in the sense that like Tyler Johnson centering Kucherov and not Stamkos. So like you'll get Tampa one pretty cheap and very low owned. And I mean, it's still that power play that really gets me into them. And I don't think Boston's penalty kill has been anything. I have absolutely no idea actually off the top of my head.
So,
I think it's been good.
are
I'm
you
okay with it.
assuming that Stamkos and Kucherov don't play together? I'm just assuming that
Wait,
they will.
Stamkos is I thought Stamkos was definitely not back.
No, he's back.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Maybe it says he's day to day. Why did I think um I don't think it's definite. Nope. It says he should play. All right. So we're going with Stamkos being back. I still think it's probably the cheapest I've seen him in a while at
Yeah,
6'8"
no,
and
that's
7'8".
yeah, absolutely. So,
Oh, my problem is I saw they practiced and I saw that Johnson was still centering, but now I'm reading that like that was just a maintenance day, an extra maintenance day. That's what
okay.
happened. I think I was just confused.
Yeah, I
So
mean, my guess is that if Tampa was fighting for a playoff spot, Stamkos would have played. Like it wasn't anything major
yeah,
that we,
no,
heard
I agree
about.
with that.
So, um,
Okay,
so yeah, I think that Stamkos will be a full go. I don't think there'll be like any injury concerns there, but yeah, the road matchup really does put a damper on my expectations. Like, Boston one is just so good that I don't see myself with a lot of spots that I like here on a 10-game slate. I don't really see myself drawn all that much to what is a nice price savings on Stamkos. Um, but certainly not a must play in it. It's just looking at some other, I guess, bits of information. Victor Hedman continues to play a ton of minutes, even when they go with 7 defensemen. So I wouldn't really worry about Hedman status, whether they go 12-6 or 11-7. But I would certainly worry about guys like Sergachev and maybe even like the McDonoughs if you ever feel the need to go there, which I don't really think you should at this point. But Sergachev definitely is like almost a non-factor when they go with 7 defensemen. On the Boston side, first line is first line, but Ryan Donato, I want to
yes.
say I made him my guaranteed goal on Tuesday. Is that right?
You were going to, but then you changed it because you couldn't afford the guy you wanted, and you gave him to me.
Okay. Yeah, that does sound about right.
And so, I mean, I would say we combined for the guaranteed goals, right? They have two. No, we have one. He had one.
He had one. Yeah, I think I said like Evander and something, but yeah, no, that's definitely.
Yes, you did.
I love Ryan Donato. I kind of outlined the reasons on Tuesday night against Winnipeg. That wasn't a great matchup. Against Tampa, it's not a great matchup, but it doesn't matter for me. Like with, well, let me check Rick Nash. Rick Nash hasn't even,
Out.
we every day we get updates. He hasn't even resumed skating. So as long as Rick Nash is out and Ryan Donato is on that first power play, I think he's one of the top plays out there. They didn't adjust his price. I mentioned Wayne Simmons is like a comparable for him, like price wise, role wise, power play one net front. But like the shots for Donato are even higher. We've seen the minutes up in the 19 and a half last game. Like that seems pretty good. So I really like what they're doing there. And for that price tag, I just think Ryan Donato is one of the best cash plays, on this slate.
I am very down for that. But is there anyone else on Boston that should be looked at? Like, do you have any interest in Boston one? I mean, I feel like when Boston one goes off, like that is the slate winning sack. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I
like,
mean they
do you
do have
think that?
explosive
Yeah,
upside, but
I mean, Tampa just got exposed by Arizona. Is it mainly like maybe if Stamkos is out, consider it a little bit more because even some people would just be like, I'm not touching it because like I'm not going as Tampa, even though we've mentioned multiple times that they can be exposed and have been exposed.
yeah, I mean, I don't really see myself wanting too much exposure to this matchup. We have a ton of stud options at the top of the price range, and I just don't really see Boston one being like on the top of my priority list. Um, I get it if you do it, but I'm much more likely to go something like Ryan Donato and Torrey Krug. I love Krug at only 5.5. I just think that's a really fair price for the way Krug's been playing. Um, with no McAvoy, no Chara, he's still getting a ton of minutes. So I think that Krug is not a must play by any means, but certainly one of those guys that I'm uh, really intrigued in looking at 5.5 on this slate. I think makes for a decent play as well. And then obviously stacking with Donato gets you those net front tips and power play exposure and some 5-on-5 that's not directly impacted by that Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak stack, which obviously if one of them scores at 5-on-5, it's very likely that the other two will have a hand as well. So that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to move on to Detroit at the KC Middlestads?
Yeah, the Casey Middle Studs. I really, it's going to be fun. I mean, I think the running joke now is that Casey Middlestad literally looks like he's like a 13-year-old in his
I
like
would say
signing
younger.
photo. Um, I mean, does that actually like impact like people looking at him and saying like, oh, he can't play in the NHL, right? Like, I feel like it does. Like, is that crazy to say, or I don't know.
Um, I mean, I've seen crazier reasons to play crazier players or not play crazier, like better plays. So like anything you want to say, I guarantee it's been used by someone. I'm sure someone's like, yeah, that guy can't do a pull up. He can't play hockey. Well, Drew Doughty couldn't do a bench press of 80% of his weight at the combine. And people are like, well, this guy can't be a hockey player. Zach Bogosian's better than him. So people have made very bad takes because of things that don't actually matter. And I'm down to say this one as well. Like, yeah, he looks like a kid. I think a lot of like McDavid when he was a rookie, like he looks like a kid. And I mean, Patrick Laine can't grow a beard yet, but he still tries. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sorry, I got
Yeah,
derailed
so
thinking about Patrick Laine's beard.
um, the I guess the major news that we are alluding to is Casey Middlestat is on the Sabres. I will play Thursday night. Corey Pronman, like one of the prestigious, I guess, NHL prospect watchers, had him ranked at the midpoint this year as the number one prospect outside the NHL. He was the World Juniors MVP despite his team only winning a bronze medal. Like he was just exceptional there.
Quite good.
What's that?
I said he was quite good. We went and watched
Oh,
him, and he
he,
literally like went through the entire what was it Slovakian defense and was like, yeah, like you guys can't stop me. And then Slovakia's like, but we can stop everyone else. So
um, but yeah, so I don't think we had power play units from practice, right? Only the
I didn't
lines.
see any. I would be really surprised if they didn't really try to get him out there on the power play. To be
Okay,
honest,
he took a spot on the second power play unit. So
that is
um,
confirmed from
let's
who?
see. Middle stat with Pominville, Rodriguez, Baptiste, and Scandella, and then the first unit was as normal. At 5-on-5, Middle stat will also be playing with Rodriguez and then Reinhardt. Um,
Sam.
So that Rodriguez middle stat could be useful. I think the only reason that this is like actually a solid play is that we know that Detroit is, despite what they did against Pittsburgh, which is I guess something we can touch on in the next game. Uh, Detroit's definitely not a team that we should fear targeting. So I think that even though he might be relatively popular, I mean 3,000 for a guy with middle stats talent probably will it'll probably like not be that big of a deal. I'll be honest. I
Yeah.
think Middlestat will get as much run in front of the home fans like as he earns. I don't see anything happening where he plays like 8 minutes and gets benched or whatever. Um, and if he plays really well, I mean, you could certainly see his line kind of be considered that maybe the second line behind the Eichel unit. Like that's not that far fetched. So
I mean, the
uh,
Sabres are really moving towards being able to run four lines, but they're definitely not there yet. I think Middlestead's, I mean, he's probably the value of the night. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has just an unbelievable amount of talent. And I think him with Reinhardt gets me extremely excited. Although Reinhardt's price doesn't get me, I don't know. It's not the best price point. Like he's still 5'6". I think it's a really risky play. You're not getting power play time together. But I think those two have great vision on the ice, and they could both like maybe down the line end up being like a top stack that we could talk about later on. But I do think that Erod Middlestead stack could be something to consider. Erod's kind of improving, I think, as of late that he can both shoot the puck. He just hasn't been getting maybe the minutes, but like you mentioned, if you're gonna play the Middlestead Erod stack, then it could end up coming to fruition as being a great play because if they are rolling, they're going to get the minutes. And if they're rolling, that means that you are making all the money. So I wouldn't say, I would say 100% Middlestead. And I literally spent the entire day like having Middlestead Eve. And even I'm like, I don't think I'd have 100. If I made 10 lineups, I might only throw him in 4 or 5. Like I think he's more of like a 50% type of play. Because we don't know. I mean, in college hockey, you look at his stats, like it wasn't like he was a goal per game type guy. Like he does dish the puck off a lot. I don't like I already seeing comparables of him. It's like don't even do that yet. Don't trick yourself into comparing him. Like see him, wait a little while, and we'll figure him out. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my mentality. And pretty much everyone except for Shane Gostisbehere, with when he came in, he just immediately shot the puck every time. So, but other than that,
uh,
like even right away though, you wait, and like I do think he's a fine play tomorrow, as I mentioned, because he's 3K at center. Like that's the only reason.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
long-winded point.
Yeah, but no, I think it's a valid point. Like, we probably have watched him more than 99% of the NFL or NHL DFS population. So I feel like it's a little bit warranted, like, what we think he can do. He's not going to shoot the puck like a Donato. Like, he didn't have those crazy shot numbers. Um, but sometimes, you just got to take a chance and, trust that he'll create scoring opportunities out there. And he's excelled at every single level he's been at thus far. So yeah, I think it is worth a shot at 3K against the, or, you know, inferior team, maybe not to the Sabres, but to like the average NHL team and the Red Wings to see what he can do. So, really, I guess you can always play Eichel. I'm not going to say no, but the shots have really been there since he come back off of injury. Had that big game against the Leafs the other night and played 21 minutes, which I do enjoy seeing. Like when you get centers that are going to crack the 20-minute mark, I think that's just a nice little notch in their projections. So I can see you playing Eichel. I wouldn't. I'm not going all in on the Sabres, so I don't think I'll actually end up playing Eichel. But I definitely see if you think Middlestat will be pretty high owned, then I doubt people will be stacking Eichel and Middlestat. So just play Eichel and kind of hope that Middlestat has the one shot, 12 minutes time on ice sort of game that he certainly could have.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I don't like to target Detroit too much, and I know they're bad, but I feel like they just don't give up goals in bunches. Like their defense is terrible, but I feel like their forwards kind of make up for it a bit. Mike Green's still out, so I mean their defense is really like bottom three, I would say, without a doubt. So like they're exploitable a little bit, but I don't know. I don't heavily target them. I do think the Eichel play is very contrarian, but we don't have to spend too much time here. I mean, Detroit did just beat Pittsburgh. I'm not that interested. I'm not. I don't know. I do feel like this game will be pretty slow paced. That's
I
kind of
don't
how I
know.
feel
I
about it.
mean, the Red Wings have given up at least 4 goals in 7 of their last 9 games. Like
Really.
they're not good. So
Yeah.
that's kind of I don't know. That's kind of my rationale.
The
Like they're
pace
just
isn't there, but like you're probably right. As of late, I guess. I don't know. The Sabres are a fine play. I just don't love the play. That's how I feel about it. And like,
yeah. No, I
is there
get that.
anything back on the other end though? Like the Larkin Matt, the stack is probably the only spot that I would consider, I guess.
Yeah, I think
And
that Larkin is a little bit more expensive than I would like him to be. He's gone from like the low 5K up to 5.8 here on DraftKings. So I'm probably just not going to play it. I think that a guy like Jeff Carter for a little bit more is a, much better play. But uh, yeah, you can stack Detroit, but I don't know. Playing them like on the road, just kind of thing, is a little bit unsettling, I think. And there's no defenseman that I really like to be
no,
like great floor plays. So I'm not really sure where I would target this game from. Like
no.
I'm just not playing Zetterberg. Like it's about time to just let that ship sail.
Yeah,
Um,
I think on the Detroit side, the one guy that like I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm still not playing is Evgeny Svechnikov. He's only getting a little bit of time. He hasn't really shot the puck enough. He's getting no power play time, but he's kind of that top prospect at 2.8. I mean, he's not like a top prospect, but he's kind of one of their top prospects. At 2.8, that like keep an eye on what he does. So like when you look back at this slate, I definitely would look back at what he does and keep an eye on that because if he starts getting power play time and he's at 2.8, like I think he does have a good enough shot. I know that people like him. He had really good numbers in the AHL. So other
okay,
than
well,
that, we can move on.
we are through about 2 games in 25 minutes. So let's really get things going. Pittsburgh at New Jersey. So Pittsburgh will likely be switching things up after the aforementioned 4-1 loss to the Red Wings.
Got all time for Glendening.
They didn't. Yeah, they had no offense generated even. Or I think it was 42 or 5-2 actually, because of an empty netter and a late goal. But like, yeah, the fact that Pittsburgh took that brutal loss, I think they'll change up the lines. Also of note, Eric Brassard seemed to, well, he did get hurt. I think he'll be out for Thursday, but um, we'll see about that. I think that could mean we see a reuniting of the Malkin Kessel Hornqvist line for like
Yep.
that second, aka first line for Pittsburgh. Um, I am more than willing to go back to the Pittsburgh well here. Hornqvist has just been an incredible shooter for this team. One shot last game, but you look at the games before that, it was just so consistent, like clockwork. So I think jumping right back on the Hornqvist bandwagon makes a ton of sense here in an up-paced matchup against New Jersey. Any other guys that you're interested in, DJ?
I mean, barring where Hornqvist ends up, I really do think that he'll be with Malkin and Kessel. But if for some reason Crosby Hornqvist, like I always like that kind of stack. I mean, you don't. The thing is, Crosby can carry any line, but when you put him with a guy like Patrick Hornqvist, that's actually pretty talented. Yeah, things work a little bit better. So I'm down with all those guys. I'm not looking at their defense really at all. Schultz to get the top power play time, but as we've seen a million times, it can change in an instant. So Schultz at 4-4, I don't think it's really doing it for me. It's not the worst play, not the best play. On the New Jersey side, I'm probably okay. I don't think I'm going to pay for Taylor Hall. That's kind of, I mean, Palmieri had a really nice night. Like, what was it? Tuesday? No,
Yeah, Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, DJ.
You're right. On Wednesday, I mean,
awkward.
You know what? You think I know the days of the week with my schedule? I don't need to know the days of the week. I can do whatever I want. But yeah. So I feel like we mentioned New Jersey as being like an all right play we were fine with, but Zacha Palmieri, I know Matt, you mentioned that as a stack. What are your thoughts? Or do you think that like Hischier, Hall, Palmieri might be back together? Like to see time together?
I think they should. At least if they don't start the game together, they definitely do kind of double shift Hall like that. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see that be the line like going forward, anyways. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different for me when you see a guy go from 5.2 to like 5.7 ish. I still like Palmieri just fine, but I don't think he's like a jam him in at all cost type play. If you want something that's a little bit more probably like punt ish with massive upside, Miles Wood is 3,300. He came back from injury and is playing on the first power play. Only got 12 minutes, but when you play that much time on the power play, assuming that Patrick Maroon is out again too, that could throw a monkey wrench into the power play. But Wood was there before Maroon showed up, so I could see that staying even if Maroon does play. But that's just a decent price for a guy who, when he's out there, does shoot the puck. So I think just a cheap name to keep an eye on. But really, I'm not that interested in the New Jersey side. Like, if you want to, go ahead, but I'll definitely be, I'll be spending elsewhere, I think. More than likely, I'll be spending on this Hornqvist, Hornqvist Kessel or Hornqvist Malkin or something like that if I just want to kind of spend up in this game.
Yeah, I think if you're going to punt, like you just said with Wood, you would be stupid not to play Middlestead, to be honest, but it doesn't really matter. If you're trying to be contrarian, who knows? But why don't we get to Florida on a back-to-back at Ottawa? Florida just lost 4-3. Actually, one of my professors drove to the game. I saw him put it on Instagram, so that's probably why the Maple Leafs won. But I think the big stat line from this game is going to be the shocking Jonathan Huberdeau 8 shots on goal, 2 goals. That's crazy. I feel like he's kind of just been on the outside looking in on the whole like shooting the puck and having fun type thing at like Dadonov and Barkov have been doing. It does look like they had a pretty good number of shots. They had 33 shots on net, so not crazy. But what are your thoughts of them on a back-to-back? Obviously, Ottawa being, worth, I would say, targeting normally. Carlson will probably play, being at their home, so I'll just kind of let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, the Huberdeau angle is interesting. I don't really think it means much like going forward. Trocheck is probably the more likely bet to be that sort of shot dominator. But it does go to show that if you're out there with good players, crazy nights like that can happen. But I'm just not a big fan of these Florida prices currently. Like, I don't really understand. Like, yeah, they were super, super duper good. But here they're on a back to back. Like, they're at Ottawa, who's, I guess, a fine offensive matchup, but they are like priced up there, every single one of them with the elites on the slate. I just don't know that on a road back to back against, not the worst team in the league. They're probably, I mean, they're easily bottom 10, but they're not like gushing chances against or anything lately. I think with Karlsson, they're a much better team. And I expect Karlsson to be out there for half the game. So,
literally half. That's what he played last time.
like, yeah, he's just been playing a ton of minutes now. So I do like that, but I'm not really seeing this Florida side being too much of a play. Mike Matheson is kind of falling back down in price. He's 4,400. I think once he gets back to like the 4K or 3.9 mark, that's when you can kind of think about him for like a contrarian, like GPP, just kind of shooter type defenseman. But
Yeah.
I'm not really seeing much that I like currently at this moment on the Florida side.
No, I mean, I'm never against the Florida stack because we have mentioned how much time they get and all that stuff. So like, if you for some reason your models or whatever you're using it really bringing it up, like I never think it's the worst play in the world. On the Ottawa side of things, they did change their lines up a little bit. They kind of in the previous game before the Islanders game, they kind of ran a lot of different units because they went 11-7. So like the lines were kind of getting jumbled. But the lines we ended up seeing were Dzingel, Duchesne, Ryan, Hoffman, Peugeot, Pyatt, and the rest don't really matter. So that Peugeot, Hoffman, Karlsson stack, does it interest you at all being at power play one, being out there together? They definitely saw line 2 minutes rather than the Duchesne, Ryan, Dzingel line. But like, what are your thoughts on this on the Ottawa side?
Yeah, I mean, that first line, Duchesne line just got incredibly hot last game. So I understand why the minutes weren't quite there for Hoffman,
Yeah.
like at 5-on-5. But I think it just makes more sense to bank on stacking around Hoffman than it is stacking around Duchesne. Yeah, I mean that's what Hoffman does.
Like if you're going one off, like you're going Hoffman here or Hoffman Karlsson, or if you go Hoffman Peugeot, you're really betting on the fact that Peugeot gets the apples because like Hoffman's the trigger guy.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't really see myself like playing Bobby Ryan like that.
No.
I just don't want exposure to Bobby Ryan over Mike Hoffman. Like I get Duchesne's really good, and I think that I think honestly, I think playing either of those mini stacks with Erik Karlsson is a pretty great play. Because I think Karlsson's one of the top defensemen on the slate, as he is every slate. But I think he's like the first guy I'm putting in for an expensive defenseman. So I think that I'm going Hoffman though. Like I just think it makes more sense. But I understand if you want to play Duchesne. Like whatever, I'm not too mad about it.
No, I really like the Peugeot Hoffman Karlsson or just Hoffman Karlsson stack. I think it's could end up being pretty savvy. I think it'll be under owned because it's a pretty big slate. How many games is it?
10.
10? Yeah. No, I like that. That's a good stack. Okay. Let's move on to the Brent Burns versus the Nashville Predators.
Excuse me. We're talking, the Evander Kanes. Like, sorry. Holy crap!
I apologize to our listeners. You are correct.
So yeah, I mean, Evander Kane, like I think is the story of this game. Like I get that it's a really difficult matchup, but what else can Kane do? Like I don't see how he can get any better than he is right now. And that's not to say that like he's not good. I just think he's legitimately playing like the best daily fantasy forward out there. Like he's given so many minutes a night, and he just shoots the puck in all of them. Like it is, I say it over and over again, but like you can literally see the Corsi attempts because he frankly doesn't care about shot quality, and sometimes it hurts him. Sometimes he goes 0 for 7 shooting, but when you're on a first power play with Brent Burns and Pavelski creating havoc up front, in front of the net, like you're going to get some juicy opportunities. And I think that's what's happening here for Kane, and I am more than willing to ride it out while he's playing this many minutes on a great team that's just heating up at the perfect time.
Yeah, no, total agreement. I don't really think I'd look anywhere else. I mean, they had LeBlanc, whatever on the first power play again. So if you're feeling like you need a little bit of a punt, he only had about, I don't know, maybe 12 minutes of 5-on-5 time though with Tierney and Mayer. So it's not the safest play to have him in there, but like we should keep mentioning like that first power play, one of the best.
So
But
frustrating because LeBlanc gets he has such good iCourse per 60 numbers.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean the minutes not being there do hurt his DFS potential. Um, but I also think that he's priced cheaply enough to where if he picks up one assist and gets 2 shots on goal, like that's great. So he makes sense for a stack with like Kane or Burns or whatever, but certainly not a must play because of the minutes
no.
hesitations.
Yeah, again, we've mentioned there's value on this slate. I think there might be more. So it's like you don't need him to be your value one off. I don't think he might not even be the best value one off. So I think he is more kind of stackable if you're really feeling like he can get an assist on the power play, which is, random anyways. I mean, unless if you get the primary one and you make the play happen. So, but Nashville side, do you have any interest here? I'm kind of feeling like it's a fade from me.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
just like I don't want to pay the price, although it's we still have Forsberg at under 6. That's like the one spot, but other than that,
I'm I think it's going to be tough to rationalize playing Yossi over, I think,
yeah,
Carlson or Bufflin, but I really do like Roman Yossi here. I'm not that interested in Ellis or Subban, despite their pretty low prices, I think, relative to their normal. But yeah, I think that Yossi is very much in play. He has goals in back-to-back games now after going like a month without a goal. So you're just going to get good floor numbers from him. Great power play time. But I don't think Nashville is like a great play here. I just respect what San Jose's been doing too much recently to think that maybe Forsberg does snap out of it at home or whatever. But um, I just don't think that, especially in cash games, that I'll take that dive. And there's a few other spots in GPPs that I think I like more. Um, so, do you have any, I guess, concerns with like PK Subban because he is the guy on that Forsberg Arvidsson power play unit? But I mean, I'm not going to say he hasn't been great because he does have great numbers on the season, but it just feels like he's kind of been a DFS non-factor as of late. Do you have any like thoughts about that, or
I mean,
anything that?
there's no concentration of like the way Nashville does it is their top 4 get all the minutes pretty much, and then Irwin and Emelin just kind of fill in as need be. So like the minutes are there enough. He did end up seeing 26 with his power play time. But I just feel like there's so much Corsi. There's only so much Corsi to go around with their top 3 defensemen, arguably 4. That like I don't know. I think if you're gonna play any of them tomorrow, like Yossi's probably the top one, and then Subban if you're stacking with the power play, it's gonna be super contrarian. I'm fine with it. Eventually, like a defenseman scoring a goal, I feel is a lot more random. It's like a good shot from the point. You get a screen in front. You never know what's gonna happen. So I'm okay with it. Really, the minutes have been there. I don't know. I'm really not sure how I feel. It's not a top play in my eyes. Like it's 1,000 more for Carlson. Like I think it's worth it. That $1,000 could be spent a little bit better by playing Carlson, if that makes sense. So yeah.
All right. So yeah, that pretty much does it for Tolvanen or Tolvanen. I'm not
How
sure
do you
how
call
exactly. Um, he's signed with them, but it appears that he either won't play or even if he does play, he's not on the DraftKings slate. So I think that's kind of something we can talk about next week if he does play. So let's go to Dallas at Minnesota. Um, Dallas is pretty much dead. They pulled out an overtime victory to, I guess, keep themselves technically alive, but I think they're at like a 3% likelihood of making the playoffs at this moment. So, um,
Not good.
you know, yeah, it's a rough time for sure. I'm not interested in them against Minnesota. Like,
Nope.
regardless of the stackability of Sagan Ben Radulov, I think they're kind of done. The I guess the main Minnesota uh, news to wrap up is that when Greenway played, he was in their bottom six with a little bit of power play time. So only played 10 minutes last game. Jordan Greenway coming out of Boston University, one of the better prospects to suit up kind of this late in the season, but doesn't seem like he'll be a DFS factor right away. Um, and it also seems like Jason Zucker this time got bumped out of the top six against Nashville. So interesting to see how that one shapes up. But any interest in Nino Niederreiter at this cheap of a price tag against the Dallas team that, we kind of talked about seems a little bit close to their graves?
It's fine. Like I don't know. I'm not in love with the play. He hasn't really been doing so much that's like, man, you got to jam this guy in. But it's okay. I'm okay with it. It's a decent value considering his skill. And his ups like it's a good upside play, not a good cash play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that getting exposure to Eric Stahl is always, a fun thing to do. Like Eric Stahl himself at 6,600 is, I think, fairly priced because he's been so good. But like Niederreiter for 4.3, if he's still with that line in practice tomorrow, seeing that during the game, it wasn't him who got bumped out of the top six for a change, it was the other line mate. That's really nice to see. So I do think that Nito is like right up there in terms of like value plays. Even in cash games, I think he's well worth a look because, as I'll say again, second power play doesn't really mean much for Minnesota. Like, Stahl's probably their best player, and he's on that forward unit, like AK second power play, and they could just as easily be out there with Suter and Dumba, in my estimation. So, yeah, I like Nino a lot here. Anyone else that you want to touch on? Like, does Ryan Murphy? Yeah, like does Ryan Murphy interest you for 2.9? Cheap guy playing some decent minutes for Minnesota with no Spurgeon.
I don't really know much about him, honestly. Okay. Like whatever, he's there. I was looking kind of the Dallas side, but you're talking about Minnesota. Like, just a couple points at least, just to mention if you're considering Dallas, which I think you kind of mentioned you're not considering Dallas. They did go 11-7. Ritchie was on the first power play. Is that Brett Ritchie, right? Brett Ritchie?
Yeah. Yes.
So he did get first power play time instead of Shore, who's been there. So he did score in the power play. I'm guessing he's more of a net front guy. But when they go 11-7, that did get the minutes to 24 for Radulov, 23 for Seguin, and 20 for Benn. So you are getting a lot of exposure to a really, really good unit. But as you mentioned, I don't really like going against Minnesota very much. So it's definitely like a GPP contrarian take only, and I wouldn't play anything else. So I think we can move on. I just wanted to mention those notes.
Yeah, and Dallas has just been bad. Like, I know it's their depth that hasn't really been producing at 5-on-5, but even Seguin, like that line hasn't been great at 5-on-5 either. So you're kind of just playing for power plays, and that's not really how I like to build my lineups. So.
When you're trying to fight for a playoff spot, claw your way in, and you go 2-6-2 in your last 10, it's not going well. And they're pretty much dead. So why don't we move on to teams that aren't dead? Although I don't know who's next, so we might be wrong. It is Chicago and Winnipeg. So we have one team that's alive and well, enjoying being in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure they've already clinched. And one team who has finally died. So Chicago, the Blackhawks. We have another, a guy that we mentioned on the last pod in like the review of the slate. Correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Victor Ejdsell. Victor Ejdsell. I mean, I listened to a Swedish broadcaster and pronounce his name, and it sounded like Ejdsell. He was with Saad and Kane, which got people very excited. He saw 17 minutes. He was on the first. He played more power play minutes on his unit with Kane, Gustafsson, Anisimov, and Schmaltz. So Kane, Ejdsell could be a stack worth considering. Ejdsell's price went up a little, I believe, to 3.3 from 3K. He had 3 shots on goal. Like he didn't score. He didn't have an assist. People might, forget about him after kind of him being sort of like the cover boy on labs and fantasy labs and whatnot. Now people might be like, move on from it because he is playing Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is good, as Laine has said before. or didn't say, but someone said it for him.
Right,
If you catch
right.
that reference, right, right. So here we are in Chicago. We have one team who is celebrating a playoff berth for the first time in a while.
It would be the team with the three of the top 100 players of all time, right, in the
Uh,
playoffs.
Actually, I'm sorry, Matt. Maybe you didn't read the list correctly, but actually, no. The team with zero of the top 100 players of all time
Oh, wow.
is making,
Okay.
and the team with three of the top 100 players of all time is actually not going to make it.
Oh, wow.
I do
Okay.
see the mistake because normally you'd think if they have three of the top 100 players in NHL history, they should be in the playoffs. Sadly, no, they missed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well,
I mean, yeah, what are
when
you gonna do? You know,
when the back-to-back Cup champion only has one of the top 100 players of all time, you would just think that if you have three, it's a shoe-in.
mm,
But
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
very true.
maybe the NHL just goes like, "Hey, you guys have three of the top 100 players. Would you like to take this spot from St. Louis or Anaheim?" And they'll just be like, "Sure." I'm still not
Well,
buying it. But anyways,
if they did do that, they'd play the whole series outdoors.
oh man, that would be fun, right? For one game, that would be so much fun.
You think Jonathan Tays would love the question of what it's like to play a game outdoors for the 900th time?
Oh man, it means a lot.
It
Brings me
means a lot.
back to my youth
Last
of
year,
playing
last year.
indoors for 15 hours a day because I am insane and love hockey.
Mhm.
But yeah, Victor Edsel here, I think is just. I think he's a great. We've seen him do one game sample, of course, but we've seen him do what we want him to do from a daily fantasy standpoint. He played 17 minutes. He played that first line. He played on that first power play. Um, the matchup sucks, whatever, but you're exposing yourself to Patty Kane for 3.3 at the center position. This is the only reason that I see Middlestat not being like really popular on this slate because I do think people will be able to say like, "Hey, look at Edgestill here," and I'm honestly not sure where I land yet on this, I guess, mini quasi debate. Um, but I'm certainly not afraid of the matchup by any means for Edgestill himself. Like, if he's going to pick up a point, it's going to be because Patrick Kane does Patrick Kane things. And I don't really see any team in the NHL stopping him when he's on top of his game. I do kind of like to note when guys are, I guess, shooting the puck a decent amount and getting just really unlucky. Patrick Kane over the last 20 games is in the top 30 in terms of shot rate per 60 minutes and obviously playing a ton of minutes, but he's only shooting 6%. Um, that's an obvious red flag, I think, when it comes to like looking at a guy who is shooting the puck but not getting rewarded for it. So there could be an explosion coming from Patrick Kane. And for 6.7 against Winnipeg, I'm not really that interested in taking a risk on it. But I think for 3.3, getting exposure to it at both 5-on-5 and the power play is a really, really good risk to take. So I like Etchell a lot at 3.3 for any format. But any other place here in this game that you're looking at, DJ?
I mean, that Edgestill line did give up 3 goals. I mean, obviously it's one game, and who knows who was on the ice on defense. It looks like all 3 units kind of took one of them on. So I wouldn't be opposed to putting a little bit of Winnipeg back against Chicago. But I mean, you're talking about paying extremely high prices for any of these top lines for Winnipeg, in a meaningless game in Chicago, and it just doesn't feel great to me. Like I feel like Winnipeg's going to roll 4 lines as they've been doing. They don't want to, you don't want to tire yourself out for the playoffs. Guys like Line got 16 minutes, Ellers 16 minutes. Like they're definitely rolling all 4. So
Well,
you're
it
not getting,
helps when Brandon Tanev has a hat trick. It's kind of easier to
yeah,
play your fourth line when when that
yeah,
happens.
that is true. That is true. So yeah, I think the point I was trying to make here is I don't think there's a ton of upside, but I do think that Chicago is exploitable for sure. And I wouldn't be opposed to, looking into this Winnipeg side a little bit, but it's tough for me to really just put all my eggs in one basket on any of these lines being as expensive as they are. It just doesn't feel like a good strategy to me. Bufflin, on the other hand, is a pretty good play, bit expensive. He's been shooting the puck just a ton. He's been a really good floor guy, but like him versus Carlson, and I don't think you could get both. So that's the debate. But we can move on to Columbus, Calgary if you'd like.
Um, yeah, I really like Bufflin here. I agree with what you said on the other lines. They all got the price bump due to the matchup. I don't dislike stacking any of them, but I have obvious hesitations with line A, like that stack, just because the minutes are never there for them. I think that the Shifley Wheeler minutes are definitely safer, like in the average game. I think, as I mentioned, kind of jokingly, but I do think that the Tanev like hat trick, whatever sort of narrative, like that kind of took precedence over the entire game against Boston. Like Winnipeg doesn't need the win for anything. They're pretty much locked into the number 2 spot in their division. So something like that, they have a little bit an easier time, like I guess seeding ice time to the fourth line. But I think, they are going to play the win. I do think Wheeler and Shifley are safe bets for 19 to 20 minutes in any game. And for that reason, I like them as a stack. Wheeler did get priced up, as did Shifley, by a lot from where they've sat at the last couple games. But that's probably just the Chicago price bump at this point. So I think they're fine. I do, I guess if we're referring to earlier in the slate, I do prefer something like Hornqvist and Kessel if they end up together, or, adding Malkin to that stack over these guys. But, Winnipeg does have merit.
Okay.
So,
ready for the next?
Yeah, let's go to Columbus at Calgary. DJ, is it time for me to just give up on Dougie Hamilton here? This team is just a walking infirmary at this point.
I mean, they're very, very, very dead is the problem. Dougie Hamilton, I don't think your process was wrong in leading you to Dougie Hamilton. But I just can't imagine this team digs himself out of the grave like that one WWE wrestler who I believe his name was Gravedigger. No, he dug graves. Who is the guy in the meme that pops up from the dead?
Oh, I don't. I have no idea. Isn't Gravedigger the truck driver, the monster truck
you're
guy?
right. No, I think I'm thinking of the Undertaker.
Okay.
I think he's a wrestler. Someone correct me in the group, man. I'm sure someone watches. I did not.
Jimmy's just gonna start.
Anyway, though, he's like that guy. Like this isn't a team that's just gonna pop up out of nowhere and look around like I'm alive. They're dead. They're buried. They are probably eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, if not, then mathematically, then in reality. So Columbus, were they down 3-0 at one point against Edmonton?
Yeah, they went down 3-0 and scored 7 unanswered.
A couple of stat lines from that game. Alexander Wennberg went +6 with only 2 assists and 1 shot on goal, but was on the guys for 6 of those 7 goals, which is just downright impressive. Panarin, of course, had a goal, his daily goal, and then Thomas Vanek, I think probably broke the slate. I don't even know I remember saying that I didn't mind it.
He was pretty popular.
15.5.
He was like 8%, I think.
Really?
Yeah, it was interesting. Okay. At least in the sharper, the bigger GPPs.
It was Tuesday night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I ended up playing.
Interestingly,
I'm not thinking about this. Okay.
Interestingly, it was only his second highest scoring night on the season, I believe.
Because you had him the one night he went nuts, though, right?
Yeah. I want to say he had a hat trick, an assist, and an additional shot on goal. No, I think he outscored that game by 1 point. I think he had 14. But anyways, it's interesting.
Points per minute were over 1.
Sky high. But yeah, now he's 5.2. 5.2 is just absolutely not. He's been fine in Columbus. He's getting a nice role. But I see that role evaporating as soon as Columbus goes down in a game, goes right back to 11, 12 minutes. I just don't think you can pay that price for a guy with that limited of a floor, I guess. Lightning could strike twice, but if you're just looking for cheaper exposure to Columbus, you're not really getting it anymore because Wennberg, Jenner, and Vanek broke the slate last time out, and I'm not chasing those points for sure. The really interesting spot to me is Pierre-Luc Dubois at 5.2 with no Foligno. Dubois did step in to play power play 1, and he is centering Atkinson and Panarin. So to me, that's where I just want to go. It's not even that much more expensive than the, I think, very, very, very inferior second line. You might even call it the third or fourth line, depending on the day. But Cam Atkinson is a guy that I think is absolutely cash viable at 6.5. He has been shooting the puck like a madman as well over the last stretch of time. Um, so I like that in this matchup. It, getting the Dougie and Giordano pairing more than likely is not optimal, but I really just don't think it matters. Calgary is just so banged up. They don't really have any decent forward depth at this point, and I don't think that they spent the entire game out against the Backlund line. So I really like this Columbus first unit, and I still do like Dougie Hamilton a lot. And if you're just looking to get wild, pairing him with Giordano does have upside. I mean, they play together. They still have really good like offensive skills, and they play together on the power play as well. So under 10K for a duo with that big of a shots plus blocks projection with offensive upside. I don't know. I might just buy back in when everyone else has jumped off, and who knows? Maybe I hit gold twice. I'm not sure yet, but I think that's still an interesting double D stack.
Yeah. Just to predecess this entire game, like Calgary is like, can I read off their lines really quick just to drive this point home?
Go for it.
Frolik, Backlund, Brouwer, which is like, boy, I mean, it's not the worst of all time, but it's pretty bad. As your top line, that is bad. Bennett, Shore, Lazar, that's not good. Ferland, Jankowski, Stewart. I wonder how Ferland is liking not having Gaudreau Monahan. And then Tanner Glass, who I thought was dead. Matt Stajan, who I also thought was dead. And then Hathaway, who I know has been like called up in the past, like played a couple minutes. Like this team is really, really, really bad. They have absolutely no depth. And I would not be opposed. This might be the night I finally get back to trying this. The Milano Bjorkstrand stack. Like, I think that could be like one of the cheap stacks of the night. Like, I know they're not going to get huge minutes, but if you believe that Columbus is going to get up early, then they're just going to roll 4 lines. I don't think Tortorella is going to get away from that. That's how it feels with them. When they were down, it looked like Dubois, Panarin, Atkinson. Like, I mean, they're probably still going to get the majority of minutes. Like, there isn't a game Tortorella isn't going to put every ounce of effort into winning. So that's the concern. Yeah, I mean, but if they get up early, like, I don't mind it. Like, we're talking about Milano at what is it, 3-1 and Bjorkstrand at 3-4. And Bjorkstrand can shoot the puck, has shot the puck, and like just been cold as of late. But we're talking about like one of the cheapest stacks you could possibly have against depth players that are just not NHL players. So
yeah, no, I really like that. I think if you're on the if something points you to the Jenner, Vanek, like Wenberg stack, like I just think they're too expensive at this point. However, everything that I said about Wenberg, Jenner, Vanek, like yeah, their minutes could just go away. Like if that happens, it does directly benefit the Milano Bjorkstrand mini stack. Interestingly,
he's like a good player at center. He doesn't shoot the puck. Like he's a fine NHL hockey player who can like dig down in the corners and like make things happen. Like I don't hate Brandon Dubinsky, but like he doesn't get power play time. But I do think he is beneficial to those other two as far as like driving up their shooting floor because Dubinsky probably won't shoot much.
So yeah, I mean, I think that just makes much more sense for the price because I would honestly expect them to have similar projections, in my honest opinion. So saving a solid 4,000 between like the two players, even if you're just stacking the wingers, I think that makes much more sense. I like that call, DJ.
Thank you. Once in a while. All right, Edmonton, Vancouver. I think Edmonton, many people will be like all over McDavid. I don't think it's a bad call, but at 8-2, it's pretty tough to fit in your lineups, although we have mentioned plenty of options to save cap. But do you think the McDavid line is the top play of the night? A top play, not the top play, maybe.
A top play, absolutely. I mean, him and Nugent Hopkins have just been dynamic. Like Tyrati, he's gonna have big games here and there. He's gonna disappear some games, but I'm not looking anywhere that doesn't have direct McDavid exposure. I don't think you can guess their power play units, to be honest. I think that's a really, really risky endeavor. If I had to guess one player that would be on McDavid's power play, it would honestly be Nugent Hopkins, which even that I'm not confident in. Like we saw a bunch of different looks last game. I don't know how the being up big and then all of a sudden it turning into just a massive loss affects things, but like we just don't have firm units, and that worries me. So if I'm playing anyone, it's going to be McDavid. It's going to be with Ryan Nugent Hopkins.
Okay, that really sounded like like something that if you were trying to describe diarrhea in the best possible terms, it would be like I'm not having firm units. So I like that. Sorry, that's all I could think of when you said that. You're like, I'm like not firm units, and I'm like, that must be like the most politically correct way of saying diarrhea I've ever heard. Okay, sorry, it really distracted me, and I had to let it. I had to let it be known. So in the group me, the league name shall be named not firm units. Okay, back to back to this game though. No, I think you covered Edmonton fine. We should switch over to Vancouver. Are you ready?
Yeah, Sam Gagner.
All right. Back to Sam Gagner. I know you called it. You're like, you know what? At a guy that is this cheap playing with the Sedins, like they're not great, but they're not terrible. Consider it. And he scored a goal. He had 4 shots on net. So definitely a very savvy take from you, very savvy play. He went up 300 since then. Not against it. He was power play 1 with the Sedins. Do not stack that line. Don't do it to yourself. Don't hate yourself. Edler saw 31 total minutes. His price is 5K, which is like probably where it should be, to be honest. I know it's kind of been like I mean, his graph on the season for his price is probably like very, wild, but 5K is probably the right price for him. I don't hate the play in general. I don't love the play. It doesn't feel like a great GPP option to me, but it doesn't feel like a terrible one. Like Edmonton gave up 7 goals last game, and if you think that like their defense is that bad, which it is, then maybe consider it. And then the one news note was Gaudette. What was his first name? Tyler Gaudette?
Adam. I think there is a Tyler, but I don't know where he is.
I've heard of that before too, like that name. Oh yeah, so Adam Gaudette. I don't think any concrete news on what he'll do or where he'll play. But it does sound like he is a pretty like worth investing time into researching type of prospect. He was. I don't think I don't know if has the Hobey Baker been announced. He was in the finalists for Hobey Baker, a very, very large number of points at Northeastern. He led them to the playoffs. You know what I mean? Not playoffs, but the tournament. Yeah. They ended up bowing out to Ohio State. He'll be wearing number 88. I am looking at a video of him right now. He's a player, and he could be something to be considered. I have no idea where he'll play.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue. Like we don't really know what they're going to do with him.
An optional practice, so we don't know.
Yeah, so there's certainly no reason to expect that he'll be like a smash player or anything, but definitely a name to keep on your radar. I tend to trust guys like Corey Pronman when it comes to these prospects. Don't really know how he profiles in terms of like shot rate. Again, Donato's like the golden standard, so I liked seeing that. But neither, Gaudette didn't have gaudy shot numbers either in the NCAA, so I'm not having like high expectations there, but certainly seems to be a nice player. Was in the honorable mentions of the top 50 non-NHL prospects, so he seems to have progressed nicely since his 5th round draft status, and that's what you tend to see like college performers do. They their stock grows and they come to the NHL and they either do or they don't. So it will be interesting to see. I don't see him being like a anything other than like a, oh my God, like I need a 2.5 center, which he is, and he will make his debut. So he is going to be a warm body playing on the ice for 2.5 at center, which to some people is like catnip. I mean, they make a lineup with Kucherov and Stamkos and Bird, and they go like, yeah, perfect, 2.5, and let's go. So
he has 20 members of his family and friends will be attending the game in Vancouver from Boston. So he's got to perform. I mean, he can't let these 20 people traveling from Boston down. So yeah, like, I mean, if you're looking for a narrative, and I didn't make it up. It's reported. So there you go. You heard it here first. The Gaudette 2.5 hat trick. If you play Middleston and Gaudette at center, I bet you could play almost anyone you wanted. Not anyone literally, but like pretty close. But
yeah, let's get to
the final game of the slate.
I did want to mention he had 4 shots per game in the NCAA. That's a little bit lower than like Eichel was in his year there. Donato was at 6 per game, so you can see like the difference. but certainly like some reason for optimism there from a daily fantasy setting if he gets like a decent role. So definitely a name to keep an eye on for 2.5. Yeah, let's move on. Carry on.
All right, so the last game of the slate, we have the Arizona Coyotes, who are going to be on a back-to-back, a road back-to-back.
Right, they're in Vegas right now.
They're in Vegas, yes. Okay, I'm right. Road back-to-back in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Kings will probably beat them down. The question is, do you want to try to figure out the exposure, try to figure out where to play? I mean, I know Boomer, you're welcome. I got you at the shout out again. Will have exposure. I can guarantee it. That'll be my guaranteed lock, is that Boomer will play LA. But I think a lot of people will play LA. Kopitar had a hat trick last game or the game before? The game before. Yeah, 2 games ago. His price is really, really high. They scored all of their goals and on the power play against Calgary, who is dead. Phaneuf, of course, had his revenge narrative goal that I just knew was going to have to happen. And Kopitar had a goal and Carter had a goal. So that first power play absolutely smashed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jeff Carter at 6.2 in this matchup is a pretty good way to get exposure.
We left out the main piece of news.
Yeah, the news that I was going to get to, the Phaneuf power play 1 goal. You might be thinking like, oh, like how did that happen? But Jake Muzzin is hurt. He seems that he is like done. So Phaneuf, if Muzzin doesn't play, should be like a solid 20 minutes time on ice guy with first power play exposure to this unit. So
the report is Muzzin will miss the next 2 games and then they'll reevaluate. So
if they're not out of the playoffs, he'll probably play. And if they are out of the playoffs, he'll probably he'll probably come back. So
yeah. So I mean, this game will not knock them out of the playoffs. I mean, if you are wondering, Quick is 8.4. If you're thinking like, let's lock that in, he is probable to start. So yeah, if you're looking to just, let's just jam in a goalie and for cash, I think he's pretty safe. Although Arizona just beat former Arizona goalie Louis Domingue in Tampa, so who knows? But anyways, back to LA. I mean, I don't know if I'll have too much exposure, but I do like Carter. I feel like before the podcast we talked, I feel like you said that this doesn't raise your stock of Doughty too awfully much. I think the sim will really, really like him, but Doughty at 5'9". I mean, we're kind of in that price range where it's like, am I really going to play him over Bufflin? Am I really going to play him over Carlson? Maybe even Hedman, Seth Jones. Like, this is a really, really tough price range for me to get on the Drew Doughty train as well. I do like the play. I think if you're just going in and you're stacking LA, like Doughty's probably your guy, but a guy like Forbert ended up seeing 26 minutes. So if you think LA is just going to bury Arizona, it does sound like, Forbert could be a guy that just try to get more minutes to for some reason when they're just kind of burying a team. I mean, I'm not going to try to get into the mindset of their coach because that's not my job, but what do you think of Doughty? I guess I'll just finally ask the question.
I just can't. I mean, like, yeah, he has had some good games, but I've just never once watched the Kings play and go, went like, wow, I wish I played Drew Doughty in DFS. Like, he's just not that involved, like in terms of shooting the puck. It shows. He gets about 10 shots per 60, or 10 shot attempts per 60, and some of the elite defensemen are getting more shots on goal than that per 60. And like, yeah, I get that Doughty plays like the most minutes of anyone in the NHL, but I'm looking at a guy like Erik Karlsson for like the same price, who is just a better all-around player, with much better like shot numbers. So I just don't really see myself ever paying that sort of price tag for Drew Doughty. If you really feel the need to go for someone that gets all these same exposures that Doughty does and isn't quite as good, you can save a lot of money by going to Phaneuf. So that's just my stance on Doughty. Like, I get that the sim does like the fact that Doughty averages like 29 minutes a night, but the rate stats just aren't there for me to warrant him getting a roster spot, in my opinion. So any of these Coyotes that you like, though, I think we know the first power play for LA, and that's kind of who we want to target.
I'm probably not going to play any Arizona if you're asking me that.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned a lot of centers, so I'm just going to play this quick guessing game. Dylan Strome's been up in the NHL for 6 games this season. What do you think his I Corsi per 60 is in those 6 games?
Dude, I have no idea. You can just tell me.
I mean, take it like okay, Ovechkin is at like 25. I mentioned Drew Doughty at like 10. Like, where do you think Strome sits?
I bet it's decently high if you're mentioning it.
That
So
is, yeah, I mean,
20.
you are good at this game, but yeah, he's at 20 shots per 60. He's only playing like 12 minutes a night, but I could certainly see if he continues to play like decently, that his
Like,
role could grow. And we know he's like super talented, so
yeah,
just a name
he's a
to
really
keep in mind.
talented player. He's just not the best skater in the world. Like that's the knock on him. Like he has a lot of puck skill. He can definitely shoot the puck, all this stuff, but his skating just isn't the best. Am I right or wrong with that? The
I
scouting
mean,
assessment. That's what
I
it sounds like.
yeah, I mean, I'll certainly have to like actually watch him play. I don't really see a reason though that he couldn't perform in the NHL. Like he
No,
lit up the
obviously.
AHL this year, so I just think that he's a name that I want to keep an eye on because he is getting power play time for them, and
Yeah, second unit. Yeah.
I just think that he's like one of those guys who, if he has a multi-point night, like which I think he's one of the more likely guys in the sub 3,000 range on at any position to do that, and just wanted to point him out
Yeah.
because he's going to go 0.1% owned basically.
Yeah, I would say gun to my head, if you say I have to play a Coyote, I'd play Jacob Chutrin to save on defense. But that's
All right,
that's me.
so let's go to our top stacks of the night. Do you have one in mind, DJ, or?
I mean, my cheap one's definitely gonna be that Columbus stack I mentioned. The question is, who would you play with them? I mean, logic would take you to Werenski, as like that's the power play 2 stack. I wouldn't be opposed to Seth Jones, and I also wouldn't even be opposed to saying like just play Cam Atkinson because like Columbus is not is a team you want to get a lot of exposure to. So, uh, I wouldn't mind it any way you wanted to do it, but Milano and Bjorkstrand with Matt, you can pick the third guy. Werenski?
Okay. Yeah. I'm just gonna say no. Like just
Yeah,
play
I know
those
that.
two as a
Oh,
mini
really,
stack,
yeah,
and
I really like
I don't.
Werenski
Yeah, I
all
don't
that.
really see a need to force that in.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna start with my like expensive one, I guess, because I want to get back on that Pittsburgh train. Like, I don't think there's any reason to assume that this happens again to them. Patrick Hornfist and whoever he plays with on a line, I think it'll be at least Malkin. But if Kessel is there, stacking him with Kessel, I think, will be an awesome way to attack things in a GPP. We've mentioned a ton of cheap centers, so that's kind of a nice little GPP construction that I'm thinking about right now. Like two cheap centers, the two Pittsburgh wingers, and then maybe a expensive wing D stack, and fill in with some cheap centers and a decent goalie. So
Yeah.
I like that Pittsburgh stack to get back on the horse against a New Jersey team that likes to push the pace.
All right, and then I'll go with Hoffman Carlson. I mean Peugeot's there as well, but again, I might just go with the 2-man stack with Hoffman Carlson, and then consider my centers down the line. But I feel like you could probably save on the 3.9 as we mentioned, possibly with Middlestead, or I'd rather try to find another stack with a center in it. But Hoffman Carlson, I think, could be a really really savvy take.
And then Peugeot, I think, is
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, I know Peugeot would be the guy there, but I don't know if I'm gonna have it, so I'm not gonna like tout it.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Donato and Krug. I really like that look, getting power play exposure there.
Very nice take.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just leave like a lot of they leave a lot of options open to you in terms of if you want to go with another sort of mid-tier line. I'm thinking something like Columbus would fit in there pretty well. You go with a cheaper defenseman to correlate with your, go with one of the cheap Columbus guys, and you have some room left to play around with goalie or whatever. The expensive first line of Columbus, I guess I should mention. But yeah, I think that Donato and Krug have massive upside due to their power play time and just overall shot floors. So that's where I'm going to go with that. Guarantee goals.
Guarantee some Genos here. I mean, the thing is, I'm a real sucker for like trying to go with a guy in his first game, but I'm gonna avoid it. I don't want to be that guy that like calls Middlestead because I feel like I've been so back and forth on the podcast about him. If you lived with me, like my roommates have to, they already know I'm insufferable about him. So do trust me when I say I'm a huge fan of his game and what he can do, but I just don't want to put all my eggs in his basket on one night. But getting to my guaranteed goal, because I was definitely trying to stall there, I am leaning towards I don't know. Do you have one? I can let you go
Uh,
first. I
yeah.
tried to stall for both of us.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ty Ratty for my first one. People are going to be jumping off that bandwagon, and Tyratty's just going to kind of troll us. McDavid's just going to be out there doing McDavid things, and Tyratty's going to be like, "Hey, I'm a human holding a stick in my hands," and he's going to get a goal as a result. So, um, I like Tyratty there for 5 point whatever going against Vancouver. I think that obviously you need to play McDavid with him in a GPP, but I think that Tyratty is going to score a goal. So let's do it.
I'm okay with it. I'm gonna go with one that we didn't mention, kind of at all, but I just kind of always like David Pasternak, and I really like him. I still like him in this matchup just fine. Um, he's just someone that like I try to target as much as possible, but forget about. I think a lot of people will, if they're gonna go with Boston, go with Dano. Dano. Wait, how do you say? Why am I Donato? Why
Donato.
am I saying Dano? That's another player. Donato. This is
Uh
not going
oh.
to become a
Uh
thing. This is
oh.
not going to become a
Uh
thing.
oh.
I'm just tired. It's late. I'm not going to call a guy the wrong name. I do think Pasternak will get overlooked, as I'm mentioning. It just kind of feels that way to me. I'm going to wait, kind of look where I kind of see some of the crowds going. Maybe if people want to let me know what, Roto Grinders and other sites say. But a lot of people are going to be on Donato. A lot of people will probably be off Pasta. I think it could be a really sharp take to fade Donato and go. I said it right. Oh my! For some reason, I almost thought I said it wrong again. Go with Pasternak. Although I'm nothing against Donato. He's a really good play. I'm not trying to say that his price should have been adjusted more.
All right, and my second take to get me up around that 12K mark, I'm going to go with Jeff Carter in addition to the Tyretti take. I just think that Jeff Carter is a great one-off play. Um, that power play exposure, the way he shoots the puck, you don't really need to stack him like with the Kopitar, kind of like the way you would with Dustin Brown or something. And he does get exposure to Kopitar, to Doughty, to just a lot of good offensive opportunities at home against a back-to-back Arizona team. I'm not going to overthink this one. I think that Carter's a fantastic cash play as well to save you a solid thousand off of some of the top studs on the slate, who I think he's every bit as good as. So I'm going with Chef Carter and Tyretti as my two guaranteed goals here.
Jeffy Carter, man, I really don't like the range I left myself with, so I might dip down a bit. I'll go with, oh boy, um, I don't know. You
Don't
like
forget
Nino
about
a
the
lot.
defenseman.
I'm not. Wait, who is the defenseman you're thinking of?
I mean,
I
there's
could have
just
just scrolled over him. Edler? Like, who are you talking about? Hamilton? Are you
I
thinking
don't know.
Krug?
I was just saying, like, don't forget about them because I think
Oh, they
that's a
exist.
decent range for
It is,
you know.
it's I don't like taking defensemen too much. I mean, it's Torrey Krug or PK Subban maybe, but then again, going two Boston guys that kind of seems egregious. I am just going to go with Pierre Luc Dubois. That's what I'm going to go with.
Nice. I
It's
dig
not
it.
maybe it's not a good guaranteed goal call maybe, but I think it's a really good play. So I'm okay with it. Like I think that if you were just trying to like point equity wise, it's a good play. Guaranteed goal, like I really think it'd be Ryan Donato, which is the problem here. Like if you're like, who will score? And I'm like, Donato, nah, maybe go Pasta. I can't just be like, no, Donato too. They both score. So
All right, so
equity wise, Dubois. If you really were like gun to my head, who is most likely to score a goal? I might even say Toffoli, even though he's not being any minutes for God knows what reason.
yep.
Okay, we
No
can move
idea.
on.
Yeah, so that pretty much does it. I guess very anticlimactic finish to the Morning Skate Madness bracket. I almost I felt terrible about it Tuesday because one, like I kind of set this up to kind of get some listener engagement, and of course I hit the lucky stones like the first night, win that, and then I just faced like two really unlucky rosters the next two slates and make my way to the final. I went up against Doug, who definitely earned his way through the bracket, had much better teams than me on every single slate. But I ended up beating him by 2 points when it counted. So I guess congrats to me.
Ooh,
Yay. So, but hopefully we can do something like that or little things like fun little games like that again in the future.
yes. Next
And
year, I'm hoping for 32. Hoping for a fight around to 32.
yeah, no. So if you liked that, definitely like do let us know if you want to see any other sort of like games. Like obviously brackets in March are fun, but anything else like that too. I think it's fun to just kind of do things on the side that are a bit different than the normal day-to-day grind of building a lineup and just trying to take first in a GPP basically. So thanks to everyone who played in that. I will be sure to think kindly of all of you when I'm using that money to purchase maybe some signs to make a poster down in Dallas this weekend, like Fire Phil Housley.
Dallas?
Or sorry, Nashville. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't you use the money to do what I would do with it?
Drink beer.
Yes.
All
Okay.
right, fine. That works.
That works. All right. So thanks everyone again. I mean, we only have a couple shows left on the season. We'll probably do a playoff preview one, but I mean, it's really no sense in doing a daily fantasy preview, a daily fantasy podcast for the playoffs, because like there's really nothing that's going to change things too much, and any like little things like that everyone will know about. So it's been a really good season. We're not done yet, but it's just kind of good to remind you guys that like stay in the group me. Let's keep talking DFS. It helps everyone's process. If you're not in the group me, it's not too late. And let's get this money. Matt,
remember, stack against Rick Porcello at all times. So.
Oh my God. Yeah.
All right.
Wait. Before now, I got to say it. My friend bet me last year that Rick Porcello would have a better ERA than Chris Sale. And I'm like, I will take that bet every day of the year. And like, I couldn't even imagine a better equity bet that I will ever have.
I don't think one exists. No. But yeah, so thank you for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at MorningSkatePod. Check out the website as well for the sim. I know we had some issues today, but they seem to be fixed relatively quickly. So, just an awesome tool. Be sure to check it out if you haven't yet, especially while you grind baseball lineups. Makes your job a bit easier in terms of collecting the NHL information. So from Doug, from DJ, and for myself, have a good slate, everybody, and we will see ya.